Surviving 17 years of prison and within hours finally being able to go to my mother's house, a place that I could feel at home and eat some home cooked food. But in those same moments that were supposed to be filled with celebration, I would be tested immediately right off the bat by my family. Ironically enough, what I always tell people, regardless if you're dealing with somebody that's coming home from incarceration, etc., the hurdles and obstacles oftentimes come from those that are closest to us in the form of family and close friends. Why? I don't know. But no one's journey is unique or different. Somebody at some point in time faces this. But for me, the timing of it all, well, I just felt that it was uncalled for. Why? Within hours of me being home from confinement, 17 years before I could even check in with the probation officer, I would be tested in a way that, when looking back, could have put my freedom at jeopardy. You see, I remember eating food with my family and then walking out to the deck with my stepfather. I've never met my stepfather up to this point. I knew who he was. You see, my mother had once been previously married to him, long before she had met my father. This was her first love. And they had reunited while he was in prison. While he was in prison, I ended up being locked up. And then he came home before I came home. But what I can tell you is I understood and understand the mentality of the individuals that are behind those walls and then come home from them. I can tell through conversation, usually quite quickly, who's who, what's what, who's serious, who's not, who's righteous, who the devil is. And I knew in the moments when I was talking to my stepfather that I was talking to the devil, or at least something that the enemy had sent directly at me to test the blessing that I would be able to partake in, which was my freedom. I remember when we walked out, he had offered to give me a jacket, and we were just going to have a conversation about what it would be like now that I was home, though I wasn't living there or staying there. But hey, this is what life is like. Tell me, you just came home from prison too, not too long ago, a few years back. Let me know. And I remember when he gave me a jacket to wear because it had cooled down. It was in January and all I had was a hoodie at the time. I instinctively checked the pockets. The interior pocket I checked first. And when I went into that pocket, I found condoms, pills, and other things. And what I will tell you is my stepfather was married, and 1+1 is 2. I found things that ultimately would reveal or expose him to be somebody that was causing my mother harm. And I knew that in that moment, and I did not hesitate. I immediately looked at him. I said, hey, this is my first day coming home, but you're on the clock. You've got 6 months to either get right with my mother or get out her house. If not, I'll be back. And I meant that. And if you follow along long enough, I'll tell you about the return trip, because again, I didn't want to make a scene then. I wanted my mother also to enjoy the moment, the first moments of me being home as her son. I didn't want to rob her of any good feeling that she was feeling in the moment. She was happy, she was singing, and my cousin said that she hadn't seen her in like that for years. So I allowed him in that moment, you know, to participate, if you will, with the activities of the evening, which was to sit down and eat with the family, where in real time he was betraying. I was tested. I sat there and emotionally I wanted to do something. This is my mother, my road dog. Everybody that knows me, I'm not a mama's boy, as I say, but everybody knows I'm my mother's son. That's the reality of it. That's the truth for the situation. And there's nothing I wouldn't do for my mother. And I couldn't stand the fact of knowing that my mother was being hurt. So that was the first obstacle. And I have to speak on this part of the story because sometimes we see the test coming from a place that we think it will come from, and then we find out that it's going to come from something or someone totally unexpected. And obviously, a lot of times when we weren't expecting it from that place. So if you're following along in this part of the story, be mindful to your interactions. Know that everybody is not who they say they are. But still, it's ultimately you that would have to pay the price if you fall victim to that. If I did what I wanted to do and put my hands on them or any of that type stuff, Nine times out of 10, I would have got hauled right back into jail and I would have had less than 24 hours of freedom. And I would have eventually ended up right back in prison based on how I felt. But it was in that moment within 24 hours, as much as that lesson hurt in moments like that and in live time, I started to gain strength in understanding that I can choose past the emotion and choose past what I feel, no matter how bad it may feel. Because ultimately the goal is to stay free, be blessed, stay with my family and more. So that was the first test from family. Trust me, there's a few more that I'll speak on. But yeah, I haven't even got past day one of my freedom after 17 years of prison. Stick around.